Hey YouTube, it's Adrian. Just before we get you to this video, do me a favor and head over to pageantlaunch.com. We are starting the world's first dedicated pageant review site, and I would love for you to join our launch team. All you need to do is put in your email address. It's completely free. We are looking to make a pageant industry that is safe, transparent, and fair. I know it's like that most of the time, but over the last year, it's become very evident that it's not like that all of the time. So head over to pageantlaunch.com, put in your email address, and let's get you to this video.
I'm Mikell Reed Carroll, International Miss USA 2020, and this is my interview with the Pageant Project.
Hey everyone, it's Adrian from the Pageant Project, and I have with me tonight for me, 9 p.m., Mikell Reed Carroll, who is International Miss USA 2020. Mikell, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
It's a pleasure. Now, Mikell is from the same system that we were talking about this before we went live on air as Sarah Davies, our Olympian from the UK, and obviously Corinne Devon as well, who actually, where is Corinne at the moment? I can't keep up with Corinne. Where is she?
Corinne still is in Sicily. She'll actually be packing up this next weekend, going back to the US, I believe, for a few weeks to visit family and friends, and then I believe she's off to Japan. Always on the move.
I haven't. She asked me to hook her up with people in the UK, so apparently she's going for a little adventure in England before she probably goes back to the US. So she's all over the place.
Probably.
Where are you from? And why don't you tell the audience where you are currently? Because I'm going to imagine those two are not the same thing.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm originally from a small town in Maine, on the east coast of the United States. The name of the town is Bath. It has about 8,000 people. We're in the mid-coast area of Maine. So it's a lovely area, small, quiet, lots of pine trees, moose, beautiful, long sandy beaches, and very small, sort of picturesque towns. And my town is very much like that. It's a very pretty town, situated on the Kennebec River. And it's really a wonderful place, has a really charming little downtown. And currently I am in Belgrade, Serbia, so in a completely different place. Unfortunately, no ocean near here. But I'm also just coming from Zagreb, Croatia, where I was living for 3 years. My husband and I both work for the US government and move around to different embassies and consulates around the world every 3 years, usually.
So what sort of travel history? I mean, how many different countries have you been to? If you're moving every 3 years, I've got to imagine you've seen quite a lot of the world.
Yes, I have. I've been really lucky. So when I first started this lifestyle, roughly 10 years ago, I didn't even have a passport. I never traveled internationally when I was a child or growing up. And then after I got married, my husband got his job with the State Department, and we went to our first post in Nicaragua, then moved to Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. Then I was back in the States for a little while. Then we went to Croatia, and now we're here in Serbia. And in between living in all these countries, we've also had a lot of opportunities to travel around Asia, Europe. I was lucky to visit Australia at one point when we were in Vietnam, and that was lovely. And I've been to, I'd say, a little over 40 countries now in the last 10 years, which is frankly something I never really imagined.
From going from not having a passport to having visited 40 countries, that's quite impressive. Whereabouts in Australia did you visit?
I visited Sydney, of course. I feel like no trip to Australia is complete without at least a couple of days in Sydney. And then my husband has a really good friend who married an Australian girl, and they live up on the Gold Coast in a very small town. I couldn't tell you now exactly where it is, but it's a really small town in the Gold Coast. So we were in that area for about a week.
It's okay. For us Sydneysiders, Gold Coast itself is a pretty small town sometimes. Is it difficult traveling, especially going from not having a passport to sort of living. I mean, I've traveled to different countries and I've stayed in some countries, let's say for a month or two. That's long for me. Living in so many different countries, I got to imagine it would take some getting used to.
It definitely does. When we first moved to Nicaragua, of course, like I said, I'd never traveled outside of the US. So Nicaragua, it's the second poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. So it was just very different from the United States and the places that I had grown up living in Maine. I also lived for a few years in Hawaii. And going from that then to Nicaragua was definitely a bit of a culture shock. But, the more places that I live, no matter how different they are, especially Vietnam was one of the most different places I've lived, you still find so many similarities between yourself and your culture and the other cultures that you're experiencing. So I always try to find the similarities. And in addition to try to make things more positive, just always the positive aspects of wherever I am, even if I'm not necessarily thrilled with everything, I try to think of the things that I do love about that place.
Absolutely. And Mikell, what sort of work, you mentioned that you work for the government, what sort of work do you do? So what does a typical day for yourself look like?
Sure. Well, previous to joining the State Department, I'm actually an attorney by education. And then my husband got a job with the Foreign Service, which meant we'd be living around the world. And of course, it's very difficult to be an attorney and live around the world because licensing in different countries is very difficult. So then I started working as well for the State Department, and I've worked in a number of different jobs, everything from American Citizen Services to right now working as a community liaison officer, which basically helps people at post be happy, acclimate to the new post and country, and creating different events and things like that, which is very different from my former career as a nonprofit attorney, where I was mostly working with victims of crime primarily.
And do you see yourself doing this sort of for the foreseeable future, or is this sort of a career path that you wanted to investigate for a set amount of time and then maybe move back to the US or move back to somewhere and be a bit more settled?
I think this is probably the career for the foreseeable future. I certainly, within the next 10 years, since we've already been in this for 10 years, foresee us back in the US, maybe in about somewhere between 5 and 10 years from now, maybe settling back in the United States, possibly the DC area or New England, where my husband and I are both from. But we're really enjoying it right now. And so are our children. We have 2 children, and they seem to be enjoying it right now as well. Of course, I have a 2-year-old who really has no clue, but my 6-year-old, he's really enjoying it as well. And he likes all the people that he meets and the different things that he gets to see.
It's an incredible opportunity. I don't know if when you're 6 years old, you can quite grab it, but I'm sure when he's, 15 or 26, 36, and he looks back at the opportunities that he had living in all these different countries, I'm sure he's going to be very appreciative of that fact. What's the weirdest or silliest thing that you miss about America whilst living overseas? Because I have quite a few American friends, and I had one staying with me for a month, and the things that she missed were very, very odd. It wasn't sort of the way of life. It was odd food items and drink items. So is there anything that you weirdly miss about America, being sort of overseas all the time?
Yes, there definitely are some things that I miss. I love living overseas and there are so many opportunities, but you're right. There are some of those weird things that you miss about the US. For me, it's discount shopping. And going to places like TJ Maxx and Home Goods and having all of these amazing things that are nice brands for really cheap prices, because I find that in most other countries, they don't really have that. For instance, if you want a Calvin Klein dress overseas, you're going to pay several $100s for it. Whereas if you're in TJ Maxx, you can get it for 40 or 50 bucks. So I miss that. And definitely, miss some food items and things that like you can't really get anywhere else. I'm trying to think of something specifically. So in Maine, we're famous for our red hot dogs. I don't even know what it is about them that makes them different, but something makes them different besides being red, and they just taste better somehow. Maybe it's something because they're from Maine, but I can't really find those anywhere else. And so I miss my red hot dogs from New England.
when you say, see, in Australia, hot dog is the sausage in the bun. The whole thing is
Yes.
called a hot dog. When you say red hot dogs, are you saying that the sausage itself is red? I mean, surely the bun itself is not red.
Yeah, no, it's not the bun. It's the actual hot dog itself, the beef hot dog, and it's bright, almost fluorescent red. It's crazy. And like I said, I don't think maybe it's necessarily tastes different than other hot dogs, but for some reason to us New Englanders, it just means we're home when we have those red hot dogs.
I hope it's good for you. To me, the idea of eating a bright red hot dog, a little bit, I'm not sure what's in it to make it bright. I thought for sure you were going to make lobsters, because that's what I know Maine lobsters.
Yes, and that's one thing that my husband very much misses. But believe it or not, even though I'm born and raised in Maine, I'm not a huge seafood person, and I don't like lobster. I know it's sacrilege, and all of my Maine family and friends right now are like dying, but I'm not a big lobster fan. And my husband, however, that's the first thing he wants. He wants lobster every day when we're visiting my family. But no, for me, it's the red hot dogs. And yeah, who knows what's in there? Hopefully it's not going to kill me someday, but I still like them.
Well, you've got to learn to live a little.
Exactly.
So obviously you've got a very interesting life. You're a global citizen. So how did you manage to find yourself in pageantry? Because from the sounds of it, it doesn't look like you needed something to fill up a whole heap of spare time. So how did you get involved in pageantry?
I became first involved in pageantry. It was roughly a little over 20 years ago while I was in college. I had heard about the Miss America program, and being that I was from an economically disadvantaged family and the first person to ever attend college and paying for it myself, I was really interested in the scholarship opportunities through the Miss America program. So I started competing in the Miss Maine America program for scholarships. And also, one of the reasons I got involved with pageantry was to help bring myself out of my shell. I was very painfully shy. Believe it or not, painfully shy. You wouldn't hear a word out of me. I think many people I went to school with growing up, unless they were a close friend, probably heard me say 2 words. I was very quiet, very shy, very sort of anxious to speak in front of other people. And I realized that if I had this dream of being a trial attorney, that I needed to be able to speak in front of people comfortably. So I thought, what better way than throwing myself in a swimsuit and heels and walking in front of people and being judged? Then I won't think twice about actually speaking in front of people. And it worked eventually, but my first pageant that I competed in was a local pageant. I think it was the Miss Greater Portland pageant. And I got on that stage and this was swimsuit competition, by the way, I practically ran off stage. I don't think I looked at the judges once, and I was mortified. And then I didn't do another pageant for about a year. And then I actually, I was like, no, I don't think this is for me. This is terrifying.
It was not love at first sight.
No, it was not. I was terrified, and I just thought, okay, this isn't for me. But I still needed scholarships. And then the next year I was in law school and really needing scholarships. So I said, you know what, I'm going to try again. Maybe I'll start to like it. And then I really started enjoying the performance aspect of the Miss America program as well, where they have a talent portion, and I sang, and I enjoyed that. And then within a few more local pageants, you couldn't get me off stage, and I started to love it. And with each pageant that I participated in, I grew more self-confidence, less stage fright, and no longer had a problem speaking in front of people and just being sort of my now like bubbly, outspoken self.
So that was where it started. How did you transition to the point where you are now? So you're the International Miss USA 2020. So did you go from Miss America, stop, and then go straight to International Miss, or was there a few pageants in between? Did you take a break?
There was definitely some pageants in between, and also taking a break. So of course, growing up, I thought I was aging out of pageants at 26. I also competed in the Miss USA system at the state level. So I competed for 4 years in that system. Also did a few other smaller pageants. And then at 26, thought, well, I'm done. I don't think they have pageants for women over 26. Then I got married, And a few years after that, I was 35. My husband and I were back in DC after our tour in Nicaragua. And I said, I miss pageantry. I wonder if they have pageants for married women. And sure enough, they do. I did some research, found the Mrs. America system, got in contact with the Mrs. America director, Raquel Riley-Thomas, in Washington, DC, and signed up for the pageant. And I also, at the time, since I'd been out of pageantry for a while, wasn't exactly sure how pageantry was different. So I contacted a pageant coach to assist me in getting sort of back into the game and figuring out, what I needed to do and how pageants were different from 26 to now being 35 and a married woman, and just sort of went from there. And then after that, competed in a few other pageants. I was second runner-up in Mrs. DC America, which was great. It's a very competitive pageant. And then went on to compete in a smaller system called the World's Mrs. Tourism pageant. And I won the title of World Mrs. Tourism in 2018. Thought I was done because I was nearing 40 at the time, and then saw that the International Ms. Pageant had just opened up to women 40 plus. And I said, you know what, maybe I'm not going to retire. Maybe I'll try one more pageant and see how I do. Why not? I had just had my daughter. And so I was about 8 months postpartum and thought, this is really a great way for me to motivate myself to get back into shape and set some new goals for myself. So then I signed up for the International Ms. Pageant, and I represented New England and traveled back to the USA because I was living in Croatia at the time to compete in the pageant in New York City, and frankly was shocked when I won. I had worked really, really hard, but I was a little shocked that I won because I was competing against so many really amazing women. And I was floored, and the competition was very stiff. These were amazingly beautiful, talented, smart, empowered women, most of which were business owners. And I showed up at the pageant and thought, well, yeah, this is stiff competition. I don't know how I'll do, but it'll be a fun experience. So why not? And then, pageant night came and I was crowned International Ms. USA, and Corinne was crowned International Ms. So it was really an exciting moment, and I enjoyed my experience.
I just want to take you back to, because you said, I think it's from the ages of 26 to 35, you had a bit of a break. So that in pageant terms, a year can be a long time. If you have a break of 9 years, that's essentially a lifetime. How did you feel when you dipped your toes back in at 35? How did you feel the pageant scene had changed from when you last competed at 26 to going back into it at 35? I mean, obviously you were at a different stage of life, but how did you feel that the pageantry scene had changed?
Sure. Well, I definitely felt that it had changed a lot since being in it when I was younger. I felt like, in general, instead of just looking for the most beautiful woman in the pageant, they were looking for more of the full package, especially in the Mrs. DC America pageant in particular. The director really sort of reiterated to us that our platform and everything that we were about and our bio sheet was extremely important. She said, you can show up and be beautiful and be fit, and that's wonderful, but you also have to have everything else in order to back that up. And so to me, that was something that I was really happy about, because I can't say I've ever entered a pageant where I was the prettiest woman. So I was glad that they were looking at more of a well-rounded woman who was there to really show off everything that she had accomplished. And so I was really happy to see that change in pageantry. And besides that, definitely things had modernized a lot. I showed my pageant coach at the time when I was preparing for Mrs. DC. I said, I have this great pageant suit that I plan on wearing for interview. She was like, no, you're not wearing a suit. You don't wear suits anymore. I'm like, you don't wear suits? Like, are you kidding? This is a great suit. She's like, no, go find yourself a nice dress. I'm like, what? So a lot of things had, modernized and things like that as well, which was great.
Did you bring out the sort of the attorney, trial attorney power suit, did you, for your pageant coach? Was that what you showed her?
Pretty much. It was, yeah, it was like this bright red suit, which was gorgeous and it looked beautiful on, but definitely was a little outdated at that point in time. And, you know, I was thinking here, she's going to be like, oh, wow, that's great. And she's like, no, you're absolutely not wearing that. And then I said, oh, well, do I need to wear pantyhose during the interview? And she said, absolutely not. Nobody wears pantyhose. I was like, oh my gosh, really? So a little bit different, you know. You can see my age come out in these things.
I've not actually thought of that I've not seen a pair of pantyhose at a pageant at all. You mentioned that, it's like, oh wow, that's actually, no, it's all fake tan now. It's done a bit differently.
Exactly.
Now, you have a comment here from Robin E. Easterling. I don't know if that's someone that you know, but Robin has said, awesome interview.
That is my aunt.
There you go. She said it's an awesome interview.
Hi, Aunt Robin.
Thanks for watching, Robin. Corinne, Mikell, I just want to ask about the International Ms. System itself. So as we mentioned before we went live, I've interviewed Sarah Davies. I've interviewed, obviously, Corinne, and I'm interviewing yourself. You're an attorney. Corinne works for the Navy as an orthodontist, and Sarah Davies is an Olympian. Now, everyone has their own career path, but those are three very sort of high-flying paths, at least to my mind. So what is it about the International Ms. System that draws that sort of woman to it? Because it can't be a coincidence that out of the three contestants that I've interviewed, you've got an Olympian, someone who is in the Navy as a woman, and yourself who's an attorney traveling the world. What is it about the system that attracts that caliber of contestant?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, like I said, when I showed up to the pageant last year, I was floored at all of the women that I was competing with. There were engineers, there were physician assistants, there was Ms. Canada, who had her own sports broadcast show in Canada. I mean, these are amazing women with all of these really amazing and cool careers, and clearly women of very high caliber. And I think what it is about the pageant is that the International Ms. Pageant is about focusing on women and showing their accomplishments, women who demonstrate qualities of elegance and enterprise. And enterprise doesn't necessarily mean, you know, that you have your own business, though many of our contestants are business owners, but also just people who have sort of taken what they have and brought it to this height of their career, or whatever project or something that they have that they're passionate about. And I believe that has a lot to do with our founder and director, Laura Clark, who is a former Miss United States and NFL cheerleader. And she herself is also living in Europe. And she's, I think, has really high standards for the women that enter the pageant as well. And I think because of that, it just tends to attract those types of women who are really super ambitious, driven, and accomplished.
And is that part, so the enterprise part, because I'm fascinated by this, because I love the idea that people involved in pageants are doing the enterprise. Some of them are entrepreneurs, so even if they have a 9-to-5 career, it's to an extremely high point. Is that actively part of the criteria to either enter the pageant or that you're judged by, that sort of the business and the career background?
I wouldn't say, I'd say overall it's a part, to the extent that the judges know that they're looking for women who demonstrate those qualities. And it probably goes into each level of the competition. There are several on-stage points of the competition, but there's also an introduction video, which is a little bit different than other pageants. We don't have bio sheets for the judges. Each judge sees a 2-minute introduction video where we produce a video and the judges see it. And it tells them about ourselves. And if we've got a career or something we're passionate about, like a passion project, or we're business owners, a lot of women will highlight those things during their video. So I'd say that's a point where that's definitely taken into consideration, as well as during then the personal interview that you have with the judges. They're looking to see what you're bringing to the table.
Those the introduction videos must have been amazing. I mean, if they sort of also take the place of the bio sheet that everyone can sort of copy paste from pageant to pageant to pageant. I mean, again, just with the caliber of the women competing. Those videos must have been incredible to look at. Did you get to see the other contestants, or you don't get to see it, only the judges get to see it?
No, you do. So they release each day upcoming the pageant. They release the videos publicly, usually every few hours in like the week upcoming the pageant for every contestant. So of course, as a contestant, you're usually, waiting for your video and then also wanting to see the other contestants' videos and, how great they are. And I have to say, so I'm not a very tech savvy person. Frankly, I'm surprised that this is going off of that hitch today, knock on wood, because of my lack of tech ability. But so I produced, and with the help of my sister-in-law, who's more tech savvy than I, basically it was a photo slideshow with me talking over it, sort of about myself. It was, I have to say, probably one of the worst videos in in the pageant. Apparently, they must have liked what I had to say. I did have a lot of substance and whatnot, but it was not beautifully done. Like Corinne's video was absolutely incredible. She had this team of people helping her, and also the contestant that won the best video, because they give out awards for the highest scoring contestant in each of the 7 areas of competition. And International Ms. Jamaica, Candy Sterling, she won the video competition. And as soon as I saw her video come out, it was incredible. It was very professionally done. I looked at it and said, oh man, I'm like, yeah, I'm just showing up to New York and I'm going to have a fun weekend, but I can't expect to compete against any of these women. Like, these women are amazing. And Candy's video was incredible. My jaw dropped as I watched it. So it's definitely an interesting part of the competition and very fun to watch.
Did you personally learn anything from sort of watching those videos, thinking that you had no chance because their videos were so much better than yours, and then being announced as a winner? I mean, was that a journey for you at all? Did you learn anything from that?
Yes, absolutely. I think what I learned was that, they're not necessarily looking for the video with all the bells and whistles in it. Yes, of course, that's a plus, and that can help you win the best video. And of course, the video is one of your introduction essentially to the judges, and probably one of their first impressions of you. So that is a very important aspect of competition. That being said, they're not necessarily looking for all the bells and whistles. What they're really looking for is substance, and want to see that you are someone who has substance. You're not just someone who knows how to get a great, camera crew together and produce an amazing video, but you're someone who has substance. You've had all of these accomplishments, and that's basically what I talked about. I talked about my upbringing and having come from an economically disadvantaged home where I was the first member of my family to go to college. And then going from that, to being an attorney, traveling the world, and doing all of these other things and doing a lot of volunteer work. I think it was clear that they really saw that. So that made me feel a little bit better as well.
And you've got Laura Clark, who I believe is your director. She's watching. She's put a few, I know you probably can't see this, Mikell, but she's put a few smiley face emojis, the ones with the heart surrounding it. So you've probably got your director watching. Mikell, what obviously anyone who wins a pageant in 2020 is having a very weird reign.
Yes.
The weirdest reign that's ever reigned. In terms of what you want to achieve with your reign as International Ms. USA, what is it that you want to achieve? What is it that you want to stand for or be remembered for, given that we have Corona and it's almost impossible for most people to travel anywhere?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, this year turned out much differently than I had hoped, but in ways, it's provided different advantages. Number one, to our contestants, since our pageant was postponed, it's giving them extra time to really put in the work that they need to do in order to prepare for the International Miss Pageant next year. And it's also given Corinne and I extra time, since we did miss out on some things, to sort of concentrate on our reign and what do we want to do, and do other things besides necessarily traveling and public appearances. So for me, one of the things that I really wanted to concentrate on during my reign was public service. It's something I'm really involved in. My platform is the prevention of heart disease in women, and I do a lot of things with the American Heart Association as well as the World Heart Foundation. And another thing that I'm really passionate about since having moved here to Europe is assisting refugees. So as many people know, there's a refugee crisis around the world, and we're particularly seeing that here in the Balkans. And before I moved to the Balkans, I was looking for a way to give back. I had seen, of course, like many other people a few years ago, these horrific videos of families and children dying as they were trying to immigrate to other places, and they were refugees fleeing these horrific situations. So for me, I really wanted to get involved and try to help as much as I could. And I'm still involved in that now. I found this organization that's actually here in Serbia called Refugee Aid Serbia. They do a number of things, but one of the things that I've been involved in is they have this workshop here in Belgrade. Of course, it's currently not functioning except virtually, but what they do is they provide hope for refugees, young people up to adults, through education and recreation. I led a number of donation drives, getting more than $10,000 in in-kind and cash donations for them. I also took the $1,000 grant that I won as International Ms. USA and donated it to them during this time, knowing that they're having a lot of issues, of course, for the coronavirus right now. Of course, refugees are more vulnerable than ever. And that made me know, that I was doing the right thing by giving them my prize money and whatnot and trying to help them out, knowing that there are so many people in need. So really, if I can leave behind a legacy, it's one of giving and compassion.
When if you do decide to go back to the US, will it be difficult for you to sort of pick which advocacy to continue with? I mean, I've got to imagine you're traveling around the world, you see so many different perspectives that you wouldn't have living in one country. So will it be a little bit odd going back to one country, maybe eventually, and maybe living with people who've only ever lived in one country?
I think that definitely will be interesting. I had that challenge when I was living in Maine for 1 year from 2015 to 2016, while my husband was on working unaccompanied in Afghanistan for the year. So I was living there with my son. And then again, got sort of reacclimated to the US after many years outside of the US and reacclimated to my home state. And so it was definitely different and gave me a different perspective than I had from overseas. I think being overseas, you definitely begin to see things differently, especially, having lived in a developing country like Nicaragua, where the poverty is very much a problem. Many people are suffering. And, previously I described myself as being from, a poor family. However, I'm from a poor family by US standards, not anywhere in the same level as people from developing countries. And so now I think I have even a greater appreciation of that and the different types of things that people are facing around the world.
I mean, you mentioned that your husband was stationed in Afghanistan for a while. I mean, I can't imagine what that must have been like, having a partner who lives in a country that has such a reputation for, violence, frankly, and war. What was that like, period, with your husband living in Afghanistan?
It was definitely challenging. It's probably been the most challenging thing that we've gone through. But at the same time, it also gave me the opportunity. So I was in Maine for a year with my son, who was approximately 1 at that time. It gave me the opportunity to sort of also refocus on myself after having had my first child and having been married for about 5 years, and get involved in other things that were passionate to me, which was an advantage of it. Of course, during that time, not seeing my husband was very difficult. We were lucky in that he did have 3 R&R trips home during that year. So we did get to see him roughly about every 3 months. We were able to see him for a couple of weeks, which was wonderful, and something, of course, that not a lot of military personnel have. But of course, every day, I was worried and concerned for his safety. That being said, my husband was in the Marines for 4 years, so he's a tough guy. So for the most part, I wasn't worried, because he's one of those people that if something horrible happened, he'd be like the one lone survivor who had like holed up for 4 months in a cave and comes out with like a foot-long beard. So I knew probably he would be fine. But at the same time, of course, someone that you love, it was very concerning. But we also, technology is amazing today, as much as I don't like it sometimes, in that, we were pretty much at the time Skyping like every single day. So me and my son could see my husband every day. And of course, for him, that was the highlight of his day, because otherwise he was working like 15-hour days. So we would get to see him and he'd get to see my son. And it was really like a wonderful time. And we'd usually connect for at least half an hour to an hour each day with him. So that was great. And also, made me feel a little bit more secure knowing that we had seen him that day.
Yeah. I mean, your family has had so many adventures. I mean, you guys living all around the world, your husband in Afghanistan. Do you ever find that the things that people are complaining about are a little bit small, given that you've had this experience, and as you said, you grew up poor, but by worldwide standards, even poor in America or Australia or the UK is very rich by 60-70% of the rest of the world. Do you ever find that when people are complaining about getting their burger a bit slow or getting stuck in a traffic jam, and you just kind of wish that they had a bit more perspective?
Yeah, I definitely think, after having had this perspective that, I can see that more. That being said, even with this perspective, I think all of us have those moments where we're feeling like, oh my gosh, this is so annoying. This isn't happening. First world problems, as you would say, exactly as I would want it. And then I like pinch myself and I say, you know what? You're having a good day. This may be annoying right this second, but you're having a good day compared to most people. So I try to put that perspective back in my head. And I really hope that everyone can, and realize that somewhere somebody is having a much worse day than they are. So it's something to always keep in mind when, you're stressing about those little things. But we all do it. We're all guilty. Even I am.
We're all human, so we just need to catch ourselves and remind ourselves that most of us have it pretty good compared to the rest of the world. Carolyn here has said, Mikell Reed Carroll, you have always had such a kind heart, and you are such an inspiring woman.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. That's very sweet. I think that's probably one of the nicest things someone could say about me. And like I said, as far as a legacy, that's the one I hope to leave behind.
That's a good legacy to leave behind. Mikell, after you're moving around different countries and you've got your career and you've got your pageantry, I want to ask you whether you have hobbies. I mean, I can't believe you would have any time for hobbies, but what do you do to relax, or when you have downtime, if you have any downtime? What do you do to unwind?
To unwind, well, of course, I love playing with my kids, but sometimes, as a mom of two as well, and a 2-year-old and 6-year-old, you need a break from your kids as well. So you need other things, other outlets and things. For me, I love hiking, walking, occasionally painting, though. Honestly, since having kids, I have not painted for a while. I sing all the time. That's something that I love to do, and I feel like is sort of cathartic for me in a way that I get stress out or happiness. Any type of emotion, I usually sort of express it through singing. So that's one of the things I do. And I also love events planning. I love planning parties, making like candy buffets and dessert buffets and things like that, and making things beautiful. So those are some of my hobbies as well: decorating, candy, party planning, and singing.
I can't believe you said candy is a hobby. What's a candy buffet? I've never heard of a candy buffet. What's that?
Well, I'm going to have to send you some photos after this, but a candy buffet is basically like a sweets table where you take a lot of candy, put it in beautiful jars, and sort of design a beautiful display of candy, and they're really fun. I first did one at my wedding. I had seen one in a wedding magazine and thought, wow, this is amazing. Of course, I was paying for my own wedding and could not afford the ridiculous prices people were charging for this type of thing. So I thought, I can do this. I went out and bought a bunch of beautiful glass jars. Again, at TJ Maxx, like I said, one of the things I miss. Bought a bunch of really pretty candy and just displayed it. And then since then, I've done that as sort of like a hobby, almost a side business occasionally, but more like a hobby, and done a lot of events planning. And usually almost always have a beautiful candy or sweets buffet as part of my parties.
So just to clarify, is a candy buffet to look at or to eat?
Oh, definitely to eat. Definitely to eat. But you have to wait until I've gotten my photos of it. If you go and try to steal a piece of candy from it, like my husband often does, as I'm like trying to get photos of it, no, then I'll like slap your hand and say, no, you cannot have that until I'm done taking photos, and then the party starts.
That's fair enough. I can understand that. If you put all the effort into arranging it, then yes, you want to get the photos.
Exactly.
Brenda Pelletier Pollock has written, "Hello, Mikell. What an amazing woman. I remember when you began your pageant career. I have loved watching you flourish over the years. You're an inspiration for young women."
Oh, thank you so much, Brenda. So Brenda was very much involved in the Miss Maine Scholarship Program. And I believe it was our first year. She helped organize a murder mystery dinner theater that we participated in as contestants to try to raise money. And somehow I ended up as the murderer. Don't ask me how. But my character was Jan I. Tor. I was a janitor, stripped of my titles due to some apparently provocative photos was part of the storyline of the murder mystery. And that's why I offed the main character. So, my torrid past as a janitor slash, nice beauty queen and murderer.
This all sounds so exciting. You've got murder mysteries happening. You've got candy buffets. Right. It all sounds very exotic. I've never seen any of this in pageantry before. I'm so glad I've seen a different side to pageantry tonight. Now, just before, so I always wrap up the interviews with the same 10 questions, but just before we go to the final 10, is there anyone that you would like to give a shout out to, or just say thanks to, for supporting you along your journey in life and pageantry as well?
Sure, absolutely. Well, in life, definitely the main people that I have to thank are my mom. She's been an amazing role model to me, a single mom, a 5 with very little resources, doing her best to raise 5 children as well as she could. She's the most devoted mom that I know. And of course, in life, my husband, he's been very supportive of everything that I've done, every crazy thing that I come up with and say, hey, Dan, I'm going to go do this. He's like, all right. And he supports me to a fault with those things, which is wonderful. And of course, I appreciate. And then in the pageantry world, gosh, so many people, a number of people on here have already sort of said hi, which is wonderful. But of course, my pageant sister queen, Corinne, she's been an amazing person to serve with in the International Miss System. And of course, the owner and founder, Laura Clark. And she's always sort of guiding us and inspiring us to do our best. So those are definitely some of the people. And also one of my very first pageant coaches, one of the first people that I ever met in pageantry, Heather Coots, Tonalier, who's a former Miss Maine USA. She coached me in a number of different pageants and often did it for free. And she's just been really an inspiration to me and someone that I've always looked to for advice on many, many things.
And just before we go to the final 10, Erica Daly has written, congratulations, Mikell, on recently being awarded the International State Department Award for your volunteer work and service-driven platform.
Oh, thank you. So Erica's my best friend, and actually she's someone I have to thank because she was literally with me at my very first pageant, the one I told you about where I practically ran off stage. And then she was with me for the weekend in New York when I won International Ms. USA. And she was also with me in Nashville, Tennessee in 2017 when I won the world's Mrs. Tourism. She's always there doing crazy things for me. One of which was the night before the International Ms. Pageant, my dress, I was tripping over it. It needed to be hemmed. I couldn't find a seamstress, so she ran over, got some seam tape, and was up at midnight with me in the hallway, taping the hem of my dress up. And we spent an hour doing that. So she is one of the most devoted friends I could ever ask for. So thank you, Erica. I love you.
Oh, that's a genuine best friend. That's the sort of best friend you need in pageant.
Oh, it is. She's always there for me, whether it's like tying up a corset in a crazy state costume or, you know, calming my nerves, because she's also a massage therapist, which is definitely the type of friends that you need while you're in a pageant, massaging my feet so I can get ready to go out.
You couldn't create a more perfect best friend for pageantry if you tried.
No, you did not.
I'm impressed you managed to hem the dress in an hour. I've seen people do a lot worse than that. So that's a good effort on that one. Mikell, let's move to the final 10. It's not a speed round. You don't have to answer quickly. But if you want to answer quickly, then by all means go for it. So question 1, what is your favorite word?
My favorite word would probably be fabulous. I say it all the time. Hopefully it describes me at points, but I use it to describe all sorts of things. Oh my gosh, that's fabulous. Those shoes are fabulous. This pageant is fabulous. That cocktail is fabulous. So it's something that I use a lot. It's probably, you know, the most fabulous word out there.
That's interesting because the UK girls say fabulous a lot. So I always thought that fabulous was kind of a UK-centric favorite word. I know that obviously people in Australia and America could say fabulous, but I've not heard an American ever claim fabulous as their favorite word. So
it definitely is mine.
Question 2, what is your least favorite word?
My least favorite word, honestly, anything that is negative and mean. I hate it when people say negative and mean things about other people. So to me, just anything negative or mean.
Sounds good. Question 3, in life, what gets you excited or what turns you on?
I think anything that I can do to make people happy. Honestly, that really gets me excited, whether it's in things that I do with my event planning, with my family, with my friends, in my charity work. It's just, my goal is ultimately to put a smile on people's face, and that makes me happy.
Question 4, what turns you off?
Let's see. Maybe tardiness. People being late, it really drives me crazy. And Erica, you're on here, so you know, even though she's my best friend, she's the most late person I know. I have to tell her, like, if I want her to be there at 8 p.m., I tell her the event's at 6 p.m. so that she'll be there by, 8:30. So Erica, she's helped bring down my hate of people being late a little bit. But it's still something that I'm not a fan of, people being late. I'm almost always early if I can be.
I mean, for me, 5 minutes late is already late. If someone's turning up an hour or 2 hours late, I would have seen them coming, I would have left. So
yeah, exactly.
Everyone has to have a fault, right? None of us are perfect. Question 5, what sound or noise do you love?
Besides hearing my children laughing, because I think that's a given for any parent, hearing your children laughing or being really happy, something that I love. I love music, and I love hearing people sing in beautiful voices.
Cue the screaming, right? Right on.
Cue the screaming, exactly, because I think next you're asking what's my least favorite sound. Cue the screaming of my child. She must be watching the interview. She's like, what's mommy's least favorite sound? It's of my kids screaming. I love hearing them laugh, but least of all, I hate hearing them scream at the top of their lungs. And my 2-year-old's a little famous for that.
That's a set of lungs that came through very, very clearly. So
Yes.
we'll take that as your answer to what's your least favorite sound. Question 7. If you could have any one superpower, what would you pick and why?
My son's always asking me this, and it's always between flying or being invisible. I think I'd probably go with being invisible, because if you're invisible, then you could sort of sneak in and like see what people are doing, so that way you'd know what they're really doing. Or flying, so that I could just fly over everything and get places really quickly without having to go on an airplane.
I tell you, in 2020, I think flying would be the more practical superpower to have, because I can't even leave Australia. So I would certainly take flying right now.
Right?
8. What job or occupation other than your own would you most like to attempt?
Oh gosh, if I could do anything, honestly, I would want to be a Broadway singer and star. That would be probably my dream occupation. I love Broadway. I love singing. I do not quite have the dance ability, but maybe some training could help with that. But that would be like my dream job.
So when you say Broadway, is that Broadway musicals?
Yes, Broadway musicals, absolutely. I can do acting as well. I'd act on Broadway, but Broadway musicals would be where I'd want to be a Broadway musical star for sure.
What's your favorite Broadway musical?
Oh gosh, there's so many of them, but Chicago is absolutely one of my favorites. I feel like that's a musical that even if you don't like musicals or theater, it will have you loving musicals and theater, because it's just so fun and every second is something going on and exciting on stage. So definitely Chicago.
I think that was the first musical I ever saw. I think my parents took me, because it's been around for a while in different iterations with different kinds, at least here in Australia. And I remember enjoying it. I don't remember much about it, but I remember enjoying it. So I think that's a solid choice. Question 9, what occupation would you definitely not like to attempt?
Definitely not like to attempt. Well, this is going to be a bit morbid, but since I've worked with so many crime victims, I would not want to be a crime scene cleanup person. That seems like probably the worst job on the planet. So absolutely not. And I can't handle seeing blood and gross things, which is one of the reasons I could also never be a doctor or a nurse, because I probably pass out. But crime scene cleanup, no thank you.
That is a reasonable choice. Final question. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Oh gosh. I think I'd just like to hear him say, thank you. You are a kind person. That's probably the best thing that I could hear.
Sounds good to me. Well, Mikell, that's about it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's really been a pleasure. And thank you to everyone who showed up for this and has been watching and commenting. Please feel free to share. And I think at some point we'll be posting this video up as well and sharing the broadcast, so people who weren't able to see it can see it at a later time. Thank you.
For those of you watching it at the moment live, it will stay up on Facebook. Some people think that once we switch off the live, it disappears. It won't disappear. It's here forever. Or worse. It's not going anywhere. I will release it on YouTube and podcast as well, just because Facebook videos tend to get buried. Within a week or two, it'll be down at the bottom. So, but you can share this. People will definitely be able to see it. So, Mikell, I'll get you to stay on the line with me just for a sec whilst I hang up with the audience. But I'm going to thank all of them for watching, whether it's live or on the replay. And we will speak to you next time.
Hey guys, it's Adrian again. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe. And remember to head over to pageantlaunch.com and join the launch team for our pageant review site. All you need to do is put in your email address. Thanks, and speak to you next time.